Alex and I are going to sit down and we are going to rank all 7 of Tom Brady's Super Bowl victories. But before we do, I want to give our takes on the game itself, Super Bowl 55, the most recent one. And Alex, we talked about all season long, both on and off the air, about how at some point Bruce Arians might mess this up for Tom Brady. And in that game against the Kansas City Chiefs, that was one hell of a coaching performance on
Uh,
both sides of the ball.
uh, uh.
Both sides of the ball, Alex. Schematically, game plan wise, a superb effort, especially by Todd Bowles and that defense.
Todd Bowles, excellent. Byron Leftwich, excellent. But here is what I am going to remind people every time we talk about Super Bowl 55, because Bruce Arians was not good in this game. And he tried to give it away. He tried his best. He tried his darndest. 1:13 left in the game. And it's still close at this point, 21-6, and Patrick Mahomes on the other side. So that's nothing. 1:13 left in the game, one timeout. They're at about the 40-yard line. They had about 60 yards to go. The Bucs did. That's light work for Tom Brady, okay? Bruce Arians, they call a run. They call a run, and then they're standing around. They're ready to go to the half. They are ready to go into the half up 21-6 against the most electric quarterback in football. Now, Andy Reid, his bad clock management skills coming back, he calls a timeout. He decides he wants to give Tom Brady the chance, which I think is an equally bad decision. But Andy Reid lost the game, so he'll fairly be criticized for this. Anyway, so they get 2 extra timeouts there because there's one on third down. Bucs drive down the field. They get to somewhere like inside the 15-yard line. I don't remember the exact spot. 13 seconds left, no timeouts. Bruce Arians wants a field goal. We'll go up 24-6 on Mahomes. You can beat Mahomes with field goals. The Bills didn't lose because of a decision just like this or anything. Not at all. And Brady pushes him back. You saw the shot. Pushes him back to the sideline. Gets Bruce Arians a touchdown. And that, maybe not in the moment, but when you look back on it with context, that was it. That was, the Chiefs snapped. That was when Tyrann Mathieu kind of flew off the handle and they come out of the locker room flat, and that was a backbreaker. And I don't want anybody to ever forget, Bruce Arians, with Tom Brady as his quarterback in the 2-minute drill in the Super Bowl, with Patrick Mahomes on the other sideline, Bruce Arians won at halftime. Brutal. Yeah. Absolutely. If they had lost that game,
had to die on this hill.
That would have been the moment. And we would have been talking about how Bruce Arians, as he's done all year, attempted to waste Tom Brady. They did not win games this year. They did not win the Super Bowl because of Bruce Arians. They won it in spite of Bruce Arians. He did everything he could this year to hold that team back. He finally realized in November to take a back seat, let Tom Brady be the coach, and Brady carried them.
Okay, but in Bruce Arians' defense, I'm not talking about his clock management here. I think that going into this game, the Bruce Arians of old would have demanded that they try to throw the ball down the field, right? Demanded that they ran the same offense that got them there, throw bombs away. Tom Brady leading the league in deep passing attempts, leading the league in air yards per attempt. That was the game plan that we would get if Tom Brady wasn't the quarterback and didn't stand up with him along with Byron Leftwich probably and said, Bruce, look, we're going up against Spagnuolo. This guy's gone against Brady in the past. He likes to blitz Brady. He likes to bring pressure at Brady. We can't 7-step drop and wait for Mike Evans to get 40 yards downfield to throw the bombs, right? We got to get the ball out of Tom's hands. And they completely changed their game plan offensively. Brady's air yards per attempt in this game was 6.1. It was 9.4 or 9.2, throughout the season. So a 3-yard difference there in the Super Bowl versus what it was in the first 19 games of the year. They went 42% under center play action, something they hardly did at, I think, about a 20% clip during the regular season. So what they did in this game was they harkened back to Tom Brady's Patriot days, and they ran a Patriot offense in the Super Bowl. So you have to give Arians some credit for taking the step back and recognizing the best way to win and being a game plan coach, because I wouldn't necessarily say that was his mantra coming into the game. And similarly with Todd Bowles, they ran a completely different defense than what Todd Bowles has run his entire NFL career. They didn't blitz. They played a lot of dime. They played 2 deep shells 80% of the time. This was not typical Todd Bowles, right? This was a much different style that they went out. They played it like Bill Belichick would have played it. They drew up a game plan, and they took the 2 weeks that they had to prepare to change themselves and shift their identity to best beat the Kansas City Chiefs. If they had gone into that game and tried to air it out against Kansas City, they still would have lost. I don't care what Patrick Mahomes looked like. They would have lost that game. They didn't do that. They ball control, possession on offense, move the sticks, the efficient passing game that we're so used to seeing with Brady, attack the middle of the field, crossing routes off play action. Those were all the types of things that we saw from this Tampa Bay team. And I do give them credit for not being stubborn and recognizing that they were not going to win this game playing the way that they had played all year long, that they were going to have to do something different. And I get what you're saying with the clock management stuff. Andy Reid outdid Bruce Arians in that category and kind of bailed him out.
That play, in theory, should have cost them the game. Against the Kansas City Chiefs, it's the exact same thing the Bills did. They played way too casual, way too safe. If the best thing, and again, I said it before I went on that whole rant, Leftwich was excellent. Todd Bowles should have been Super Bowl MVP. Yeah. We need to talk about being able to make coaches Super Bowl MVP. We really do. If the best thing Bruce Arians did for the Bucs was get out of the way, what does that say about him as a coach? That's my whole point. If the best thing he did, if his biggest contribution was to get out of the way.
Not here or there, though, because, it's in some degree when you have Tom Brady as your quarterback and Todd Bowles, who is a former NFL head coach running your defense, like this is not some guy, this is not Steve Belichick running the defense, right? This is somebody that has run his own NFL team before. Then, yeah, you kind of let him, and that was why he hired Todd Bowles, as Bruce Arians has said. I'm an offensive guy. I know offense. You know defense. You run the defense. I run the offense, right? It's Bill Belichick and Bill Parcells, right?
I guess what I'm saying is there was only one time really that Bruce Arians tried to put his fingerprints on that game, and it was the closest the Buccaneers came to losing it.
Yeah,
that's my point. That was the one aspect where Bruce Arians had to make a decision. It wasn't the coordinators. It wasn't Brady. It was up to Bruce. He almost cost him the game. And then the second time, Brady stepped in and said, no, sit down, old man. I know what I'm doing. You don't. Let me decide. I've won 7 Super Bowls. You barely got here with 5 first overall picks. Let me take the reins. You go sit down. You go try on some hats. I'm going to win us a Super Bowl. You can come up on the podium after. That was the deal, because
that was the championship game too. Though remember, they went to Brady before they went to Arians on the post game podium in the NFC Championship game.
Right, because you normally talk to the coach before the quarterback.
Right, this is the Brady's team. And the other thing I did want to talk about before we start making these Super Bowls is the maturation of Patrick Mahomes, because this has got to be for the Kansas City Chiefs a big time learning experience for them. It's the only way that they come out of this the other side, not looking like Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre and all these other quarterbacks that have won one early on and never gotten back. Russell Wilson, I think you can put in that category too.
Absolutely.
And it's the maturation of the fact that you have to have something else to go to as an offense. You can't just be a deep passing attack just because you have Mahomes and Tyreek Hill. I get it, but this was the 07 Patriots, right? This was Randy Moss over the top, Wes Welker in the middle of the field, and that's all they got, right? And this was Travis Kelce in the middle of the field, Tyreek Hill over the top, and that's all they got in Kansas City. So I'm really fascinated to see what's the maturation of Mahomes, what's the next step. And I get it. I get he was under pressure a ton. And that was definitely the deciding factor of the game when Kansas City had the ball. But they tried to move in the pocket. They tried to throw some screens, but that short, efficient, quick passing game is not there right now for Kansas City. They don't have it in their bag, and they don't have a great running game in their bag either. So they need to find a way to evolve, because even though they might be able to blow doors off of every single team in the regular season with this offense, and it's not going to matter, they're going to go 13-3 next year, 12-4, just by showing up, right? But when they get into these postseason games where you got teams specifically game planning for what you do, and you're going up against really talented defenses with great coaching, that's when you need to be able to play lefty, right? You need to be able to have something else in your bag. And right now, this Kansas City Chiefs team is, quite frankly, one-dimensional. And it's basically just Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, and Travis Kelce doing something, pulling something out of their hat, making something happen. And if that's all you can do as a team, you go up against a really good defense like the Bucs, they can stop you and they will slow you down.
I guess, everybody wanted to compare Mahomes to Brady going into that Super Bowl, and his real comparisons are Drew Brees, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers. And that could end up being his career.
The one and dones early on. Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. Guys who will flirt with the MVP more often than not. They'll get on runs to the conference champion, all that. Maybe Mahomes gets back and wins another one, but the roster is going to change here. They're over that honeymoon period where they're barely paying him anything. The $500 million contract is going to kick in, and it's going to get a lot more difficult. And they're the team now where you're going to get the opponent's best game every time. The other thing I want to see, and it kind of goes to what you said, I don't think Tom Brady became Tom Brady until he lost a Super Bowl. And he was always a competitor. Like he was always, we know the stories early on in camp, he was always a very fiery competitor. But I don't think that final switch got flipped until he lost in 2007. Maybe in 2011 it took for that. That's when he went from just being a competitive guy to like this maniacal, that's from when he went from wanting to beat people. Like Tom Brady used to just want to beat you. Now he wants to, he's not okay beating teams. He has to beat you so bad that you never want to play the game of football again, that you want to go home, curl up in a ball and stay in bed for a year. Like that's the only outcome that's acceptable to him. I don't know that Patrick Mahomes is there yet, right? Have we ever seen him jawing with the defender like Brady did with Tyrann Mathieu? They're going into the half.
Time to see that though, right? Is because this could go one of two ways,
right? So that's what I'm saying is I want to see, do they become the 2014 Seahawks? Do they become that Atlanta Falcons team, right? This is an extreme example. Do they become the 2017 Jaguars? This is the first time the Chiefs have really gotten punched in the mouth with this core. And I know they lost in 2018, but that wasn't like this. How do the Chiefs respond to getting punched in the mouth? Do they turtle and we had our moment, it was nice, we got knocked off our block? Or does Mahomes does it take him to another level, right? And we'll see how they respond. We'll see what happens. They've already looked a little soft. Tyrann Mathieu tweeting that out after the game is soft. Are they going to embrace?
He is really the one. He did not want to battle with those Tampa Bay defenders. That's the game plan on Travis Kelce. He still had over 100 yards in the game. So I'm saying this like, they
quiet 100 yards though.
Quiet 100 yards. And if you punch Travis Kelce in the mouth, figuratively on the football field, of course, he is somebody that will kind of
check out.
He will. He will. And I think we talked about it before the game. That's sort of what the Patriots have always done against him. I think this is a fascinating time for the Kansas City Chiefs because you're right. They were a front-running team. Nobody had beaten them. Nobody had come close really to beating them. And the Niners came close, but ultimately they won out. This is their first true test of adversity, I would say, because I think in 2018 in the AFC title game against the Patriots, that was the year before, right?
Right. They knew that the defense still wasn't good yet.
Right.
Their running game wasn't there. Mahomes was still learning. That was them that was them kind of knowing, all right, we can go toe to toe with Tom Brady and all of that. Now they just got totally knocked off the block. So I want to see the Chiefs as a whole, yes. And will they embrace the Travis Kelce mentality and think, we got ours, let's go away? I want to see what happens specifically with Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, me too.
How many more, and not to say that Brady never did commercials or anything like that, but he's getting surgery today on that turf toe and all of that. Does he get right back in the lab? What's his mentality next offseason? Where is the quote from Tom versus Time? I'm literally sacrificing everything to be better than you. So what are you sacrificing to be better than me? That right now is a direct challenge to Patrick Mahomes. How much are you going to sacrifice? Are you going to go do stupid, dumbass TikTok videos with your brother, right? Or are you going to go out and get an extra 100, 150 passes in?
Are you going to change up your style enough? Like obviously he's Patrick Mahomes. And
right. What are you going to add to the bag?
Well, what are you going
to add to the toolbox?
The 15-step drop that cost them a lot in this game. Now I know the pressure was awful, and I'm not trying to throw Patrick Mahomes under the bus necessarily, but when you're
himself any favors,
right? When you're under that kind of pressure, and your defense mechanism for that kind of pressure is to drop back 20 yards, behind the line of scrimmage and try to throw the ball down the field. That's not necessarily the way. The way is probably to go to a 3-step drop and get the ball out as quickly as possible. Can he evolve his game to that point?
Well, I'll add this on too. Did the Chiefs ever adjust to what the Bucs were doing? Like it felt like they just, the coaching staff never called anything different. They were just beating their heads against the wall, waiting for oddballs to blitz.
And they did try to move the pocket a little bit. They did throw some screens early, and Levante David and Devin White were just all over the screen passes, and they just ate those up. They did run a lot of 5-man protections, though, which is what Kansas City does. They want to put 5 guys in the route. They don't want to leave an extra guy in to block. So that's definitely their MO, is to run 5-man protections. They did that a whole lot in the Super Bowl, and they really they left those tackles out to dry. They really did. They had a backup right tackle. They had Mike Remmers, who was the backup right tackle already, moving over to the left side. So really, they were on their third or fourth layer of depth at the tackle position, and a bunch of guys playing out of position, stuff like that. And they didn't do a whole ton, I would say, to help those guys out. And Patrick Mahomes dropping as far back as he did not help. And the time to throw stuff, I think, is skewed a little bit because he's running around for his life, and that's why it took him so long to throw the football. But mainly, if that, and I'm not saying the Patriots have always been, they've been susceptible at times to Brady being under pressure too and losing games like that, 2015 AFC title game, stuff like that. But getting the ball out and setting and dropping back to a comfortable place in the pocket, and not always being that guy that drops back 10 steps every single time he hikes the ball. That's definitely going to have to be an adjustment for Mahomes. So let's rank these Super Bowls, because we're going a little bit long on this Patrick Mahomes discussion. I'm going to start ranking them. I'm going to go.
So are we ranking Brady's performance in the Super Bowl or the game itself?
No, the game itself, the meaning of the game, the stakes of the game, just
that's a lot, because I was going to say one last takeaway on the game itself. That wasn't a good game. Like, aside from the Brady angle, like, let's say that's just a Week 12 game, like Sunday Night Football. We're coming away talking about what a disappointing game that was.
Yeah.
If you don't have a rooting interest in that game, that was a very boring football game.
Especially in the second half, where both teams kind of bogged down a little bit.
I mean, you were kind of waiting for the Chiefs spark, and it felt like for a bit maybe they could come back, and it was almost 28-9 at the end of the third quarter, which was the same score in the Falcons Super Bowl. But there was no drama. There was none. After the first quarter, you had the Bruce Arians mess up at halftime, which was hilarious, but there was no drama. There was no hook there.
Alex is calling it everybody else is calling it the Andy Reid mess up by calling a timeout there, and Alex is calling it the Bruce Arians.
Because Bruce Arians got bailed out. I said Andy Reid was worse, but he lost. Everybody knows that. I don't need to bring attention to that. I need to bring attention to the fact that Bruce Arians, with Tom Brady at quarterback in the Super Bowl against Patrick Mahomes, wanted halftime instead of a 1-minute drill.
I don't want to.
Belichick would never do that.
I don't want to get him ranting again. So let's rank these Super Bowls where he can rant about something else. Number 7 on this list, I think that this was a low-key kind of cementing the legacy type of game for that Patriots dynasty, but Super Bowl 39 against the Eagles, I think, is number 7. For Brady himself, he didn't win MVP. Deion Branch won MVP. I don't even think he was second in the running for MVP. I think Rodney Harrison was probably had a better game or a better chance of winning MVP in that game as well. But there was that one throw that I always think is a little bit underrated, the touchdown pass to David Givens right before halftime, where he throws it all the way across the field, and Givens got to tap the toes on the end line.
Santonio Holmes catch before Santonio Holmes did it.
Yeah, that was a very, very the geography of that throw was a lot more difficult. Geometry, thank you. Not maps. Geometry of that throw was a lot more difficult than maybe it looked like on paper, only a 4-yard touchdown. But that was the first time the Patriots scored in that game. They were down 7-0. There was only about a minute left in the half. They scored there. They go on a run in the second half. They hold off a little bit of a late comeback attempt by Philadelphia, not much. But Super Bowl 39, again, it's the third one. It's the dynasty game, but not necessarily, I don't think, up there for Brady right now.
Do you just want to go through the whole list, and I'll because I don't know what the rest of them are. So why don't you just rattle them off here?
So Super Bowl 38 versus Carolina, which I think is an underrated game, by the way. Just a great back and forth type of battle. That was number 6 on my list, just because I think that there's games that have passed it since. But if you go back and actually watch that game, that was a really entertaining game. And Carolina hung in there for a really long time. And if John Casey doesn't kick the ball out of bounds on that final possession, who knows, right?
Well, it was 6-0 after a quarter, and then both teams scored in the 30s. Like it just turned into a barn burner.
Yeah, and I believe it was Musa Muhammad, not Steve Smith, who has the longest touchdown from scrimmage. Not the James Harrison's touchdown was the longest touchdown period, I think. But Musa Muhammad's, I think, is the longest touchdown pass in Super Bowl history.
Sounds right.
Yeah, and that was a really great game. Then I had Super Bowl 53, the last one with the Patriots. Just it was this low. I think it's higher in terms of the legacy conversation, but it was this low just because it was a dud of a game. I mean, let's face it, unless you really like defensive football, that was not a very exciting game. I have this one, Super Bowl 55 at 4. New team blows out Mahomes. There's a lot to like there, but I still think it's kind of behind some of these other ones. Number 3, the first one, Super Bowl 36. Certainly the coming of age moment for Tom Brady, really put him on the map. And that final drive, hitting Troy Brown across the field, Jermaine Wiggins, really underrated catch to just get them a little bit closer into field goal range. J.R. Redmond, I believe it was, had some catches out of the backfield on that drive as well to get things going. That's number 3. Super Bowl 49, defeating the Lob. That's number 2. I just think that the talent on both sides of the ball for both teams, if you look at those rosters 1 through 53, that's one of the best Super Bowls of all time in terms of pure talent on both teams. That's right up there with some of the old time Super Bowls where you had a bunch of Hall of Famers on either team. Number 1, 28-3. I don't think you can ever top 28-3. I know it wasn't the best Brady half, at least, or 2.5 quarters really, but just in terms of the comeback and everything like that, it's hard to argue that that's the top one, I think.
Yeah. So again, I mean, if we're talking about, Brady's individual performance, I think you more or less have it. I'd put the Carolina one probably above LA if you're just talking about Brady's performance. And talking about, what was the most entertaining game, what was the best game to watch, I think Seattle has to be 1, and then 28-3, just because 28-3 was a blowout for a half. And
Right.
then I'd move the Carolina one up. I'd put the Tampa Bay one at the bottom in terms of most entertaining games, because that, again, was not a very entertaining game. I still think 36 gets slept on too much. And it's not that what Brady did in the other games wasn't incredible. But first off, the first one's different. There's something, and guys have said this, when right, the Tampa Bay players were saying all week that Brady was kind of preparing them for what to expect. That first Super Bowl hits different because you don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
And he overcomes that. The late game drive, which he hadn't really had to do something like that before. I still think, and maybe this year's Chiefs team is in the conversation, but I still think the 2001 Rams are the best team, all-around team he ever played in a Super Bowl. I still think that.
Really good too.
Which team?
The Seattle team's really, really
good. Seattle team's up there, and Kansas City's up there too. But those teams, when you prepare for those teams, right, in terms of the full team effort, those teams were created, or those teams existed in the NFL that Tom Brady created, right? I don't know. And Patrick Mahomes is certainly leaving his mark on the game of football, but nothing really ever changed the NFL like Brady and Manning did in the early 2000s. So we look at the 2001 Rams now, and if they existed now, I mean, they're a good team, but I don't think people understand.
I think if the 2001 Rams exist now, they average 40 a game. I mean,
for sure.
Them, right? They can't do the Marshall Faulk game plan in 2020. That's a holding call or a DPI or something every single time,
Well, that's part of the point. I think people look at that team and think, oh, they had a good pass catching running back. They had a couple of really good receivers, a good quarterback like that. They look at them like the Chiefs, right? Like you might look at what the Saints were supposed to be before Brees' arm fell off. They don't comprehend. I don't think a lot of people, especially our age, comprehend what a unicorn that Rams team was at the time. Yeah. That wasn't how football teams were built. You didn't throw to your running back 5 to 10 times a game. You didn't put a ton of emphasis on getting multiple wide receivers, right? You didn't, teams didn't run 11 personnel. You were in 12, in 12 or 21 most of the time. Those were the base sets. You either had 2 tight ends or you had a fullback. Your base set was I form. They came out in 11 personnel. They threw the ball to the running back. They threw the ball 35 to 40 times a game. This all sounds right now like, yeah, duh, of course they did. That's football. That didn't exist at the end of the time. No, Brady was going up against a special, different kind of team that ultimately turned into the kind of team he would make normal in the NFL. But I think that game and that performance and everything around it being his first, him being hurt the week before and not being named the starter until Wednesday, the team he was playing, I just think that one gets slept on too much because there was so much unique about that one that he never had to deal with again. that I think that one is truly still special.
Yeah, and he had some really great throws in that game too. The David Patton touchdown is one of my favorite Brady highlights. That ball.
Well, you can't tell the story of the David Patton touchdown. The coolest part about it is they ran this exact same play the week before with Bledsoe against Pittsburgh, and you get like the exact same frame for frame, the exact same thing plays out. Because at the time, Brady wasn't Brady yet. Brady and Bledsoe were kind of the same thing, and you really see it's the exact same thing, and you can see how kind of Brady looked. That whole team, that whole year, and I heard Ted Johnson talking about this on the radio over the weekend. That whole year, that whole Patriots team succeeded on the idea that Bledsoe wanted Brady to succeed.
Yeah.
That was the whole catalyst for that team. And you see it in those two plays. You can see just how much Bledsoe worked with Brady, how much he helped Brady, how much the guys around him, right? There was no schism in the locker room. Nothing like the Eagles with Wentz and Foles, right? Everybody was fully on board for what was happening, no matter what happened. You see it in those plays. And that's the other reason that Super Bowl 36 was special. How often in the Super Bowl is a quarterback playing for his job? We don't know for sure that Brady was, but it's not unrealistic to think he may have been.
A lot of people that after he won the Super Bowl thought that they should go back to Bledsoe in 2002.
Right.
This was if we were, took a time machine back to 2002, our show right now would be Brady or Bledsoe, right? That would be the conversation. And the other thing is I remember, I'll never forget inside that tunnel when Brady's like smacking guys on the head and he's going nuts. And I believe it was Willie McGinnis that went up to him and was like, calm down, right? Just calm down. And that was Kid Brady, right? That was Kid Brady. And by the end of that game, he was no longer Kid Brady. I feel like he had sort of cemented himself. But yeah, that throw to David Patton was special. The game-winning drive. John Madden on the broadcast says, "I play for overtime." You got a quarterback. You're going up against this team that you're 10-point underdogs to. You're lucky to be here. Don't chance it. And it was that one check down to J.R. Redmond that gained like 10, 11 yards that got the drive started. And all of a sudden they put together a couple of plays. And John Madden's like, well, now I sort of like what the Patriots are doing, right? And he sort of changes his mind mid-drive. That to have the balls and the guts to allow Brady to put that drive even together. And yeah, you had Adam Vinatieri. So you knew you only had to get within field goal range was 55 yards and you're in a dome. So it's really, you know that you only have to get about 30 yards. But still, to have the balls, I don't know. At that point in Brady's career, because we're not talking about a Patrick Mahomes. We're not talking about a guy that threw 50 touchdown passes in his first year as a starter, right? We're talking about a guy that took a few years to sort of become who he is now. I think run the ball there and run out the clock and go to overtime.
One more piece of context about that drive, too. And again, this is where I think because of everything Brady's done since that game gets minimized, because he's made it look so common, but no team had ever won the Super Bowl on the final play. Forget the final drive on the right. There had never been anything like that done in the Super Bowl. We think now, he came back from down 28-3, the 10-point comeback against Seattle in the fourth. He kept setting the comeback benchmark in the Super Bowl. I think he said it. Yeah, he said it 3 times because they come back. No team had ever won when trailing by 7 in the fourth quarter. Or there was some stat against the Rams. No team had ever won on the last play. He does that. No team had ever won trailing by 10. They do that against the Seahawks. And then, of course, 28-3. There was nothing like that. That was a movie. The Super Bowl coming down to the last play, that only happened in movies. There was no concept of anything like that happening. And then, like you said, to take this kid who was a kid, who didn't have a dynamic arm, who, he had a couple of clutch drives in the regular season, but this is completely different, and go on that march, and for him to execute it so perfectly, we think now that's light work for Tom Brady, right? I said that about the halftime of the most recent game. That was so unprecedented and unheard of at the time. It was the storybook ending. Now it's like, oh, cool. Tom Brady came back in the Super Bowl again. That's neat. Like, back then, nobody had ever seen that. So that's just why I think, winning 7 Super Bowls is an incredible legacy. Obviously, winning the first 3 is an incredible legacy if he stops after that. But it's the way he won the games.
He's
It's
won
the
it in
way he
every
did
single
it.
way at this point,
Right,
right?
he needed the blowout for bingo. I tweeted
Yeah,
that during the game, but
yeah, he's won it every
nobody
way.
had ever seen anything like that at the time. So that again, I think that one gets slept on too much because everything that's happened since, both with Brady and with the NFL, has kind of thrown the context out of whack. But if you try to put yourself back in 2000, February 2002, and look at the game through that lens and who that Rams team was and what Super Bowls were like at the time, what offenses were like at the time, what Brady was at the time, that truly may have been his most improbable win.
Yeah, yeah. I really feel like I put 36 at 3. Only reason why I put 36 at 3 was because I feel like that game was definitely more about the game plan on defense
Sure.
and Ty Law and Willie McGinnis and Richard Seymour and those guys and what they were able to do on that side of the ball. Whereas 49 and 28 to 3 was Brady in a comeback, putting the team on his back and bringing them back. Right. And
Right.
I think that you will never, in my opinion, in terms of going up against a deficit and an all-time defense in the lob, that's just such a insurmountable thing for most people. Not only had nobody done it at the time in terms of the comeback itself and in terms of the point spread, but now you're doing it against what people were calling the best defense of the modern era in the NFL, right, in their primes. Now, a lot of those Seahawks players now are downplaying it, saying they were all injured and stuff. No. Richard Sherman, Earl Thomas, Cam Chancellor, that was the Legion of Boom. That was prime Legion of Boom that had just blown out Peyton Manning in the Super Bowl the year before, just destroyed Peyton Manning and a really good Broncos offense the year before. And Brady brings them back down from double digits in the fourth quarter for a victory. He needed the Malcolm Butler interception, I guess, at the end to really, but ultimately that was the Brady Mona Lisa in my mind.
Yeah.
Was that
I mean, the fourth quarter is the best quarter of football any quarterback's ever played
it's
in
right up
terms of
there
the
with
context.
maybe even right. I think it's better than 28 to 3-2 because he didn't have the turnover worthy plays necessarily. The Edelman catch in 28 to 3 is a fantastic catch by Julian Edelman, but probably should have been an interception by Tom Brady. So they didn't have that one in 49. It was picture perfect, pristine execution for the entire fourth quarter. I'm glad that we talked a little bit about 36 though, because that one is so long ago now that I feel like we can just talk about
Well,
it logically, but that is definitely one that needs to be in everybody's top 3 at least.
and that's the thing. People talk about it nostalgically, almost as if it didn't happen.
Yeah,
Almost as if it's like some weird,
parallel universe or
it's
something.
like the prequels, like a non-canon prequel or something. But and naturally, personal feelings, I think, impact this too. Like everybody has their favorite Brady Super Bowl and ones that maybe mean more than others. 36. I mean, that's when I fell in love with the game of football. Was that Steelers game and then that Super Bowl. So that one means more to me. I think for both me and you, and it objectively wasn't a great game, like you said, but Super Bowl 53 is always going to be one of my favorites
Right.
because I was there. I covered it. It was my first year on the beat. I was in Atlanta. We were on the field after the game, the two of us. So that one's always going to mean a little more. I have some personal connections in terms of things that were going on in my personal life during 49. And those, as great as a game as that was, that's always kind of been elevated for me.
Yeah.
So the Panthers Super Bowl, I got sick at halftime. Believe it or not, 7 to 8 year old me got sick at halftime. So I had to wake up at 5 a.m. the next day and watch the rest of it before school. So that was always been a little diminished because I don't, that's a weird memory. So I think
that was Janet Jackson, right? It was
yes, that's not what made me sick. Although that might be why my mom wanted to leave because I kept saying, I want to stick it out. I want to stick it out because we were at a friend's house. She's like, no, we're going home. You need to go to bed. So I didn't even see it. We were like running around in the next room,
your mom
like playing our own little football game. But
your mom knew.
so I mean, I don't know if you have any personal, with any of them, but I think it's totally fair that because I tell people, oh, I love Super Bowl 53. Like, the hell's wrong with you?
Right.
I was there. It was a major moment for me. So it's people are debating this and it's a fun debate, but I do think there needs to be room for everybody has different personal relationships with each of the games.
Yeah, absolutely. So 53 is obviously always going to be special to me because we were covered it our first Super Bowl, covering it as reporters. So that one was always going to have a special place in my heart. 36, I was also there, so that one is definitely up there for me as well. 9, 10-year-old kid sitting in the stands with his father watching the Super Bowl and watching the Patriots win it. I will definitely never forget that experience, and it was, I would say, the memories that stand out from 36, other than the game itself, was afterwards. Just the jubilation and shock, I would say, of all the Patriots fans that you saw out. And I was 10 years old, and I'm standing out there, on Bourbon Street, because my dad's like, I don't even care. Like, this is a once in a lifetime experience. Like, he's
We
probably
thought,
he's probably never going to be back here again, right? So eventually it got a little bit too rowdy for a 10-year-old, and we went home. But
sure.
the point is that we were there, and I just remember we were with about 20 people, mostly family, and very close friends to the family, and just everybody was just in a state of shock that we actually just witnessed them win. The only reason why we were able to go was because the tickets were so dirt cheap, because nobody thought that it was going to be a good game, because they thought everybody thought the Rams were going to blow the Patriots out, and it was right after 9/11, so traveling and air travel and stuff like that was really a different experience. So the tickets were dirt cheap. We all went down there, and I just remember people screaming, "We shocked the world! This is like unbelievable!" That was the, at the time, the greatest upset in Super Bowl history, bar none. So that one will always be special to me as well. And I think 28-3 will always be special too, just not just because of the memes and the jokes and stuff like that aside, but because I had if you told me that any team was down 28-3 in the second half of a Super Bowl, the odds of that coming back are obviously, what, less than 1% or something like that. So witnessing that, even though I wasn't there or anything, we'll never see anything like that ever.
Right.
That was a flash in the pan that we will never see again. So those are the ones that are special to me, though. I understand, having each person having their personal perspective too, and I think that it's hard to rank all of these, and maybe we're a little bit biased, not talking more about this Tampa Bay one as a higher one up there in the list,
But
but
was it like the offense wasn't the best unit? Like the defense was better than the offense for Tampa.
the reason why, if
It
we
was a
want
blowout.
to keep everything out of us, all the biases out of us, and talk about it objectively, is he was alone, right? He doesn't have Belichick. He's not on the Patriots anymore, and
Well, if you want to talk about the season, then fine. But if you're talking about the game itself, again, the defense was better than the offense. Not that he wasn't good, but the defense was better than the offense. It was a blowout. There was no, the game itself was signature. Did Brady have a signature moment? Like, what's the Brady moment from that game? What's going to be? It's going to be him yelling at Tyrann Mathieu. Like, that's the moment.
Probably yelling at Tyrann Mathieu. Maybe as much as I maybe the touchdown pass to Antonio Brown in the third quarter that put them up. I think it was something like 28-9 or something like that at that point, or something. That was kind of the score that made it. The game was over basically at
Right.
that point, even with
I
Patrick
just
Mahomes on the other side.
you talk about the David Patton throw in 36. You talk about the throw to Vrabel in 38 against the Eagles, the fist bump. Obviously, you have the image against Seattle when they score. I think it was the tying touchdown, and he does the
Yeah,
point right to the sideline.
that was the go-ahead touchdown, I think, to Julian Edelman.
Go ahead. Yep.
They called the play, I think, maybe even on that drive. They called it earlier, maybe the play before it was, and
Yes.
they missed it. Edelman got open, but the timing was off, and they missed the throw. I think it was on the drive before. They missed the throw. They ended up scoring anyways, later on in the drive. But then they came back to the same play call again, and he points to the sideline to Josh McDaniels like, "I'm glad we went back to that."
Right.
Good call going back to that one.
In 28-3, you can pick. You got 4 or 5 signature moments. Then against the Rams, it's the throw to Gronk. So,
Yeah.
like, I don't know that this
Gronk is like underrated in a lot of ways. I feel like,
right.
if you want to put a signature moment that capped the Brady career, even with this Tampa Super Bowl, that throw to Gronk to set up the game-winning touchdown, that's his, that's his Jordan dunk, right? That's his
Right.
that's his moment.
There was no, it seemed like in every Super Bowl, and maybe this kind of stopped with 53, but he was one-upping himself every Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I guess you could say without Belichick is one-upping himself, but just in the context of the game itself,
I think new
he
team
played well, but that moment, like that individual moment, it was Tyrann Mathieu. That's what it was.
Yeah.
That's gonna be the moment. And that, if you want to talk about which Super Bowls had the best Brady moment, then yeah, 55 is absolutely at the bottom.
Yeah, yeah, and it definitely. I almost can't, because I think all year long both of us were conflicted about Tom Brady succeeding, and we
Yeah.
obviously, I think I always wanted him to succeed deep down, but at the same time it was frustrating to see him playing in a different uniform.
Right. I wanted him to succeed personally. And I think I said this on the show last week. I wanted Super Bowl 52. I wanted him to throw for 500 yards and Bruce Arians to blow the game. Like I didn't, but there was some weird closure
Yeah,
there. First off, there was Brady's mom in the pregame saying he still sometimes accidentally said, "Let's go Patriots." Like that was closure. And I get why. I was thinking, in the days before the game, are the Patriots going to say anything? And I was like, oh, I hope they don't, because it's going to wreck me. And they tweeted, and I suddenly felt like that was closure. I didn't think that was going to be closure. There was actually some closure to that. And I at the end of the day, I'm happy he won. And I mean, we'll see. The big thing for me, and we've talked about this off the air, was I didn't want a Peyton Manning Colts type of scenario where Peyton Manning really isn't around the Colts anymore. I mean, he's a Bronco. That's his legacy. That's who he is. And it would have
I
been.
don't know about that. I mean,
Well,
Peyton Manning.
here's the thing.
For the
You
Hall of Fame
can't.
was on the Indian. It was Jim Irsay's plane. He wasn't on John Elway's plane.
You can't say Tom Brady, New England Patriot anymore. We have to share him with the Bucks now. That just is the reality of it, and that sucks. That's what I didn't want. I'm happy he won, but selfishly, it sucks that we have to share him.
Yeah, I think when they did win the game on Sunday, I felt a lot better about it than I thought. I thought I was going to be angry. I thought I was going to be pissed off for multiple reasons, not just at Brady, but because the Patriots let it get to that point and let him leave and stuff like that.
That part still pissed me off, but
yes, yeah, me too. But I definitely felt during the season, I at times I felt more angry about him succeeding than I did him winning the Super Bowl. I think that there was definitely a lot of closure, and I think people should feel that as well, and recognize that you know he went to a really good situation and he was able to cap off the end of his career, and hopefully, and this, the book is still out and whether this is going to happen or not, but hopefully we don't have to witness him limp to the finish like Peyton Manning did, right? Like hopefully,
yeah.
hopefully even if he loses in his final year and he doesn't walk off into the sunset like
you just want to see him walk off and not have to be carried off.
Right. You don't want to see him go out like Peyton Manning went out with a terrible season where he's
don't you think
and stuff like that.
Don't you think that's the only way it ends, right? He's always said that he'll play until he sucks. And now he's talking about playing beyond 45. Like, maybe it's not as drawn out as Peyton. And part of the problem was the Broncos were trying to preserve Peyton's legacy, right?
Right.
Osweiler, that was Osweiler, right? With him in that last year. Yeah. Osweiler was the better option, but the defense was so good that they were still able to win games with Peyton. And they were kind of just forcing it. Like, I don't know if that happens. Like, I don't think it will be drawn out with Brady. I think he means it when he says he sucks, he's done. He's not going to force it. You're not going to see like a Brock Osweiler type situation.
Right.
I also don't know if he gets benched. I think if he plays like Peyton in that year, especially if he's with Arians, they're going to put him Blaine Gabbert?
I think the most amazing thing about the whole thing, and then we got to wrap it up, is that he hasn't lost an ounce of zip off that fastball.
Nope.
When you watch Peyton Manning play at the end of when you watch any Drew Brees right now, watching him at the end of the career, noodle arms, right? Noodle arms. Can't get the ball there. Not that it was some tight window, amazing throw, but that touchdown, the second one to Rob Gronkowski, when Gronk breaks off the route, I mean, that's just a rifle, right? That's a zip. And then that's a ball that you shouldn't be throwing at 43. You just shouldn't be able to do that.
Even at 33, it's like
it's crazy that we haven't seen any drop off in arm strength at all from him. Is insane.
I guess when it comes down to it, I know we have to wrap it up, so I'll try to make this my last point. Osweiler was he a first or second round pick? Like,
was he that high?
He was a high pick. I'm look that up real quick while I make this point, because I think he was high. The point being, the Broncos planned for Manning's departure, right? They brought in the next guy when Manning was still there. we all know that was the beginning of the end for Brady in New England, and he did not respond well. He ultimately responded well because he won the Super Bowls, but he took the Garoppolo pick personally. Did you look it up?
Yeah, 57th overall.
Okay, so top 60 pick. That was the plan, was for him to he was the next guy. They had the next guy in place to replace Peyton. Does Arians, do the Buccaneers have the cojones, whether it's this year, whether it's next year, to draft the next guy while Tom Brady's still in the building? Will Brady let them use a quality pick on a quarterback who won't help him win immediately? Or will he go in and put his fist on the table and say, I need a lineman, I need receivers, I need a running back, I need this, I need that? You know, that's to me what it comes down to. When it inevitably happens, and it might be years, but when it inevitably happens with Brady and he gets into that Peyton Manning situation, will there be a Brock Osweiler, or will it just be some scrub? Will it be a 7th round pick? Will it be a veteran washout like Blaine Gabbert? That's going to be interesting to see. Is Brady can only hold it off for so long. Do the Bucs kind of prepare for life after Brady at some point while Brady's there? Or do they ride him to the ground and it's just like, you know what? If we suck for 5 years after this and we have no picks and we have no cap space and we have no quarterback, it is what it is.
Yeah, and I also wonder at some point if you're Brady, like let's say he goes back to back with the Bucs, right? And he wins again next year. At what point do you look at it and say, I know he wants to keep playing. I know that that's where his heart's at. But at what point do you say, let's hang it up a year too early instead of a year too late? Right?
I don't think he does. He's not going. If he thinks he can win another one, he's not going to step away.
Yeah, but I don't know. I just, at some point in time, it's like if you win 8, you already won 7. I mean, no one's going to pass 7, right? And if you win,
nobody was going to pass 4, and now Brady's almost doubled it.
Yeah, I mean, no one's going to pass 7. I don't think anyone's going to pass 7.
Nobody was going to pass 4. Nobody was going to pass. That's the thing. It's so unprecedented. Like, you can't.
Patrick Mahomes was the only hope, and now I don't even know if Patrick Mahomes can make it back to the Super Bowl.
I don't even know if Mahomes was a hope. I don't even know, because we saw him playing well, but he was in the perfect scenario. He's on a rookie deal. He has Tyreek Hill. They've hit on all their draft picks. Right. He has Travis Kelce. I don't think Brady will accept the fact that nobody's going to pass 7 or nobody's going to pass 8, because he did it. So I don't think he'll accept the fact that it can never be done.